Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast. Enjoy the show.
What is up, mga paps? Here's your fantasy papi, Papi Roy, and welcome to the Fantasy Basketball PH, your Filipino brand of fantasy basketball. And of course, as promised, me being more available this coming week. So we have our usual weekend, and no, it's not weekend anymore. It's our weekly review, reviewing the past notable news and happenings in the whole fantasy world, uh, specifically week 3. And then we're also gonna talk about what's coming next, what's installed for us for week 4. And given that this is our English episode, apparently the past episodes we've been doing it always in English. But don't you worry, since I'm going to be more available, I'm easily tomorrow. I'm gonna drop our usual Tagalog episode, but at least for this one, let's have another English episode with our mainstay, our kababayan, DMac in the house again. What's up, bro?
Roy, how are you?
Doing great. Finally slept 8 hours straight after a couple of weeks.
That's good to hear. You got to look after yourself. I know fantasy is important, but you got to look after yourself.
Apparently, fantasy isn't also important in my case. I mean, there were days that I wasn't able to really update my roster, so that's that. But yeah, thank you for reminding me that I need to really find some time to take care of myself. So, and how about you, bro? What's up?
Yeah, been busy, personal life, and obviously staying on top of things. Went away on the weekend for camping, so there was a day here and there that I was unable to set my lineups, but that's okay. I was pretty successful even in our league as well. So just got the win in our league, 5-4, I think. So that was pretty close.
Nice, nice. Uh, that's something that every fantasy manager that is also slash dads really struggle. Trying to be number one is being involved in ad drops, because we 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. is like something that we really want to do, but we seldom really have enough time to do that. Another thing is updating lineups before the actual game. So yeah, so to all fantasy GMs slash dads out there, I know you feel us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Don't forget about the mums as well. They're out there too.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. All those mobs. Speaking of, if there's any lady fantasy GM out there, we would love to really, invite you here in our show, because it's been a while since we had a guest that that had. It's been a while to have a refreshing perspective, given that they say that this sport is predominantly, kind of like almost half of it are men, but I do believe our lady GMs has something to say about that. So hoping someone could contact me or NBA Fantasy Bible DMac here, because so we could invite you.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I'm trying to get my wife into it. It's taking some time, but I feel like I gradually can just chip away and eventually she may just succumb to the pressure. But we'll see.
We have someone, we guested someone that we kind of like pushed to play fantasy, and during our draft she actually drafted a lot of handsome players. So it was an auction draft. When Luca and the likes of Luca and Steph Curry was nominated, I was pretty sure that she's gonna just gonna go all in for sure. Okay. Anyways, like what I've mentioned today, we are going to review notable and some notable news and notable players in the past week. But before that, let's give the floor to our good friend here, DMac, to refresh us what's in store for us for week 4.
Absolutely, yeah. Week 4, interesting schedule. It's going to be quite tough for streaming for those daily changes leagues. But we've got 20 teams that play 4 games. So obviously the 10 that play the 3. But of those 20 teams that do play 4, we're looking at Washington and Philly. So the 76ers have the 3 quality games. So again, for those that are uninitiated, the quality games are those days that have low volume. So it's really important that you get those streams going. And for this week, it's actually Thursday through to Sunday. So it's the back end of the week. The first 3 days, really hard to stream, to be honest. And you won't be making too many moves unless there's a real hot pickup at the moment. So when we're thinking about Washington and Philly, it's a tougher one with Philly. Their depth, unless for some reason you have guys like D'Anthony Melton still on the waiver wire, which would be pretty ridiculous. But if they happen to be on the waiver wire in those shallower leagues, pick him up, and particularly in those deeper leagues. But Washington, I feel like there's some gems that we can pick up this week, particularly with some with Bradley Beal and COVID protocols. He's questionable for tomorrow's game, but if he's to sit again, there's a lot of different options that we can look at.
There you go.
So I guess
So
we've got players like at Washington, obviously Will Barton. He's been up and down this season, more down than up, but he's one option. Denny Avdija, Monty Morris, for some reason, if he's not rostered, he's another guy to look at as well. And if you're looking just for a points punch, Rui Hachimura, he's a very popular player as well.
yeah, given that Bradley Beal is out and we're talking about usage, I don't think Rui Hachimura shies away in getting a lot of usage. So I'm pretty sure he wants to get some.
Right, absolutely. I think he'll definitely not shy away from taking the shot. I know in the last game, Porzingis, he was in foul trouble, so he didn't get the usage that he would have looked for. Kyle Kuzma had a relatively quiet game as well. So I was looking for those two to pop off in Beal's absence. So let's see what happens tomorrow. You may not, with such a loaded Monday, you may not even play any of these guys as well. So keep that in mind. Very loaded Monday and Wednesday. Obviously, Tuesday, there are no games. You've got US midterm elections. So keep that in mind. And like I said, there's going to be limited streaming the first 3 days. So save your ads if possible, depending on how many ads you have, but save them if possible for Thursday through to Sunday.
I also would like to add Corey Kispert in the mix. I guess Corey Kispert uh, got just played his first game of the season. So in the past year, I guess he is a player that we usually stream for snipes and sometimes still. So if it's a super deep league, I guess, and you need snipes, he could be an option for Philly. Monitor Joel Embiid's status. Maybe Monster Harrell could be somewhat serviceable. Someone that I like when Joel Embiid is out is Basketball Paul Reed. So he's someone that usually doesn't give us any stats, but whenever he gives stats, he gives what 6 steals and 3 blocks. So if you want to do a roll the dice move, I would really love to suggest Paul Reed. And also in the
Absolutely.
in the other side, since DMac already mentioned the teams that has the most quality, the most games for quality days, so which is 3. I just want to mention the 4 teams that has the least games in that stretch. So that's Indiana, Houston, Los Angeles Clippers, and Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just have to be mindful of those quality games as well. So be careful of your moves as well. Like I said, if possible, retain those moves for later in the week, and hopefully you've brought forward a solid team from last week as well. So keep that in mind because it could be the difference between a loss and a win for the week.
There you go. With that said, before we move forward, just want to reiterate. So the first 3 days, guys, most likely you won't be streaming, especially for Monday and Wednesday, because there's a lot of teams playing 15 games and 13 games, respectively. So you're going to be really activating your main players, so that's going to be fine. But yeah, just want to reiterate that, because if you're someone who just click start active active players, you might not notice that. So me and DMac wants to reiterate that it's going to be a full game for the full days for those dates, Monday and Wednesday. Okay. So, bro, with that said, let's just move forward to, well, let's just I guess let's just check out some questions and comments here before we go to our usual recap. Uh,
Let's
let's
do it.
just scroll it up. I can see several questions already, but my PLDT connection, my internet provider, doesn't agree. But let me just pick one. There you go, Papi Mark Javaliana. Papi Toson Coloco, good evening. Let's park that, Paps. We're gonna talk about it later for sure. Craig is ours as well, since Johnson's out, definitely. Okay, let's talk about it later. Something that I love for our followers, they're also commenting and speaking in English, so I really like that.
I appreciate that as
it's,
well.
it's our English day today. Papa Jackson mentioned, sadly, I have Harden and Siakam, boss, which is both injured, and I'm dominating the assist category in our league. Last week's matchups. Can you recommend streamers in 12 team that can help my CP3 to sustain my assist category? Any
Yeah,
players?
that's a tough one.
Yeah, especially that we can't see their free agent pool. So it's like guessing in a haystack.
It is guessing, and I think, as we were alluding to earlier, I think it's hard with the streaming at the start of the week. But if you are desperate for assists, I think, as we mentioned, Will Barton could be a sneaky source of assists. But again, he's pretty unreliable this season. Yeah, it's really tough without seeing your waiver wire. So give us more information, and we're happy to help.
Yeah. We'll wait for more information. I'm currently checking some teams here, because like for example, I was trying to look at, like for example, Chicago Bulls, if ever they have back to backs in the kind of like end of the week, because someone like the Dragon Goran Dragic could be streamable, just because Zach Lavine might, and who do you call this? Zach Levine and Kobe White might not play, so Goran Dragic get more run. But I guess it's not an option since they only have one game on that stretch. But we'll get back to you. Papi Jacksunga just give us more information in terms of the available players in your league. But most likely those are guards usually. So here's what I'll suggest. Uh, Go to the app. I would assume that's a Yahoo app, and then just sort out the assist category. So at least you have a guide on who are the top players that our good friends in Yahoo suggests. And then once you go there, maybe you can comment it out so DMac can actually give his points. Papi Ronnie Mison, what's up? Papi Adref Santos, Pap, someone offered Kawhi and Aiton for my Siakam. Thoughts? Are you willing to get Kawhi, bro?
No, I don't trust that situation. I was big on him leading into the season. I think I even had him over PG-13, and I looked silly on that one. I'm avoiding Kawhi because even today, I think Tyrone Lue came out and said he's progressing, but it's really hard to pinpoint when he's going to return to the lineup. So I'm trying to avoid Kawhi. I would even sell for a top 50 player, but I would not let go of Siakam. He's not quite MVP caliber, but he's had an amazing start to the season, and we're unsure of what his timeline to return is at the moment. But it may only be a matter of a few games, potentially 1 or 2 weeks. So I'd be holding Siakam. Aiton's been extremely disappointing as well. So I'm holding Siakam, particularly if you've got an IL slot.
I also agree with that. The progressing part for, for Kawhi's status really sounds like salesy for my taste. It's like we've been here, like it's like a triple J tweet that he's becoming back. But guess what? I kind of like tweeted this. It's coming from our brother, good friend Aaron Bruski. Seems like there are some kind of like what do you call this, breadcrumbs, the Triple J might really come back sooner than later. But then again, it's the Memphis Grizzlies, so let's prepare our hearts to be broken, right? Okay, let's now go talk about some top news and happenings in the past week. So, when we say notable and kind of like controversial news, usually it involves this player, Russell Westbrook. In the past couple of weeks, Russell Westbrook has been scrutinized to the point that, you know, the whole Lakers nation really wants to oust him. But him playing off the bench kind of like, you know, really showed us some wonders, especially the two-man game between him and Anthony Davis. Really love, you know, watching them play, getting that boost of confidence that, you know, I think they really needed. So bro, do you think this is a fluke, or do you think that this is something that could start kind of like a comeback for the Los Angeles Lakers?
He's looked revitalised. Has looked amazing in the last week coming off the bench. I think he's embraced the role. I think finally, potentially, he's let go of that ego as well. And he's looked really good to the point where he's the 40th ranked player in the last week, which is outstanding. And that's with 5.7 turnovers a game. And if you don't care about turnovers, then he's a top 20 guy in the last week, which is outstanding. The Lakers are still losing. Yes, they've had a couple of wins, but they're still losing. So it could be blown up at any stage as well. So if you can, see if you can sell high on the guy. It's just been a really amazing ride. I know you've picked him up in one of your leagues, Puppy Roy. I think that was a great pickup, and he's been quite serviceable. And if you can sell high, I'll do that.
Apparently I can sell high because that team in Josh's leagues, unfortunately I have Kyrie Irving, James Harden, so I badly need Russell Westbrook to do his thing for now. I tried to scope in Bones Highland to be that reliever, but yeah, it was a bad couple of weeks, last 2 weeks for me in that league because of the injuries happening to my team. But yeah, loving that late pick for Russell Westbrook. I really thought of something like this happen, but it's too early for me to really rejoice. At least I have a couple of moments using Russell Westbrook, and I would agree in selling Russell Westbrook. But for me, this might not, because you know, if you're trying to sell this to someone that you usually play with in fantasy, and you know that is actually watching and following a lot of fantasy basketball analysts and fantasy basketball shows, it might not work. It might not work. So I would suggest like a smoke screen 2v2 trade offer if you want to get rid of or flip Russell Westbrook, or try to, you know, simmer it a little while just to, you know, just to prove that hey, it's been a week. So I guess this isn't really a fluke. So maybe that's the time we kind of like hammer the trade. But yeah, still generally he's definitely a sell high, and I would definitely try to flip him if I have Russell Westbrook, especially if you just drafted him out of like his upside, you know, it doesn't fit the bill in terms of your theme. Imagine you tried putting in KD or Tyrese Halliburton being like a efficient team, and then you get Russell Westbrook. So I'm pretty sure you're the his name is, you know, popping red in your team.
Right. He's
Aside
actually been amazing with his percentages. So that's something that we're not used to from Westbrook in the last few years. But he's shooting at close to 57% from the field and above 90% from the free throw line, which is unheard of in the last few seasons for Westbrook. So again, if you've got a Lakers fan in your league or someone who just believes in the hype as well, you've got name value. So like you said, you could use a smokes green or a 2-for-1 or a 2-for-2. But yeah, if possible, see if you can get off of Westbrook, sell high. But yeah, he's looking really, really sprite at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I really love watching Westbrook when he's in his games. So much fun to watch. Speaking of
Right.
so much fun to watch, these two guys, this is kind of like one. It should be, I think, is part of the top 10 most loved fantasy players of all majority of all GMs that are playing fantasy basketball, right? So let's talk about Isaiah Hartenstein first. One word from me, bro. Finally, he's getting the minutes I believe he deserved. But unfortunately, it's because of an unfortunate situation wherein um Mitch Robinson, is currently on the shelf. But what do you do with Arsai Hartenstein? Do you think this is something that can really be a thing in New York?
I do. I think he was easily a top 100 player even before Mitch Robinson's injury. He's currently ranked 54th in 9-cat, which is amazing. And in the last week, he's in the top 35. So I think it's definitely sustainable. He's the better player than Mitch Robinson. I think Tibbs just needs to see that, but I think he's getting the minutes anyway, and it has been a bit of a timeshare. But obviously, with Mitch Robinson's propensity to get into foul trouble, that's boosted Hartenstein's value as well. And we've talked about it before, but statistical scarcity with blocks, it just boosts his value. And we know that he's a per minute monster, and he's now getting the minutes to be able to make him a real 12-team viable guy. So he's looked amazing. So if he's, again, for some reason, if he's not rostered, make sure that he is. Just go and pick him up. Maybe stop what you're doing, or after the show, stop what you're doing, and then go and pick him up because he's been amazing and he'll continue to be amazing. So write it out. I would even probably just retain his services rather than looking to sell high. I think he's that good.
I think this is the your opportunity to get some Isaiah Hartenstein, because people who owns Isaiah Hartenstein that isn't really aware of his value is trying to flip Isaiah Hartenstein. So if you're really, you follow a lot of again fantasy shows and fantasy sites, I guess you value Isaiah Hartenstein more than them. So maybe it's a good thing. I doubt that people are gonna sell high on Hartenstein just because of the name recognition. Because when you say a Isaiah Hartenstein, you always he's kind of like anchored of really playing as a backup center. But then again, it doesn't matter here in fantasy, right? As long as you really provide the stats. So yeah, take note. It's part of the trade game. I guess I could create an episode of that. It's also profiling the GMs that you are playing with in your league. So yeah, get some Isaiah Hartenstein in your teams. And I also think Tibbs like Isaiah Hartenstein. I mean, he's going to be. I think I mentioned this in one of our episodes. He's going to be the next Taj Gibson of Tom Thibodeau, and it's a good thing. It's a pretty darn good thing for Isaiah Hartenstein. From Isaiah Hartenstein, DMac mentioned about being per minute monster to another per minute monster, the Anthony Coco Melton. I used to call him Coco Melton again because the fact that I am a dad, so we are more familiar with the Coco Melon. So Coco Melton, but they call him Quick Melt. Some other GMs call him Quick Melt. The Anthony Melton, bro. Big shout out to Jonas Nader. I think this is kind of like the best situation that he can get in the Philadelphia 76ers, right?
Absolutely. We've got Harden on the sidelines with a foot strain. So he's probably going to be out for a few weeks. So this just opens up more minutes for him. And you mentioned it, he's a per minute monster. He has been for several years, even during his time at Phoenix and then again at Memphis. So we know what he can do on a basketball court. And he's a quality guy. And it's just great to see him now playing 30 plus minutes. I know it's only been for a couple of games. But even when he was playing the mid 20s or low to mid 20s, he was still a top 80 9-cap player, which is great value. And I was fortunate enough I made a mistake in our league. I picked him up instead of Tari preseason. but it's turned out to be a wonderful mistake. So I'm really happy to have him on my roster. I wish I had more stocks of him, to be honest, but the next few weeks is going to be immense. It's going to be huge in Harden's absence. So look out, and if possible, if you can, he may be floating on a waiver wire. I picked him up yesterday in one of my leagues, and that was unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. Because usually when you, especially in the past few years, and there's a lot of fantasy analysts hyping the Anthony Melton, it's hard to really see the Anthony Melton floating in the free agency. Because even though he isn't really getting the minutes, there's something in the back of your head that, oh man, he is just a couple of games away of giving us those 3 steals, 2 blocks, a couple of assists and rebounds game in just 20 minutes, right? So there's always that hope. So yeah, the Anthony Melton, what can I say? Next up, bro, let's talk about the some past on the positive news. There are several players that recently just came back out of injury. But I would like to for you to really discuss a player that I wasn't able to put here, which is Darius Garland. Bro, how good is the Cleveland Cavaliers? They are amazing in the past
They
few
look so good.
games.
They look so
Very,
good. They look
very
like the
good.
complete team. They've got a wonderful record at the moment. They're getting better. Garland's just returned, and he's fit in nicely alongside Donovan Mitchell. So Mitchell hasn't regressed as well. I know he's taken a hit with assists, but his scoring output's still been amazing. And as a collective, the Cavs look sensational. But Garland's looked great as well. And I was surprised that he's come out after injury, after a bit of an absence, and he's just firing on all cylinders. So him and Mitchell, it's a scary backcourt and really young, exciting backcourt for many years to come. So watch out, Cavs, and they could be a sneaky pick for champions this season. Who knows? They just have that chemistry, and Mobley's not in fine form as well, and he can get better. Same goes with Jarrett Allen. So when they build that chemistry, they're going to be a scary proposition.
And don't forget about Kevin Love. Kevin Love had several good games in the past week. So, having someone that is a very, very good vet with Kevin Love and Rolo in the team, it's again, it's a very well rostered team, especially for this generation wherein usually it's kind of like revolving to big threes and duos, but this time Cavaliers really did a great and amazing job putting it that team. There's a lot of solid role players. You have shooters around those solid what they call this, a main man that usually can create space for the team. You have good defenders. You have good big men. And despite that, this team is still young. So big props to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I guess LeBron has been thinking that, man, he would have wanted to finish his career in the Cleveland Cavaliers. But again, I guess that's a different story. But yeah, Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the dark horse in this season. Um, with that said, let's move on to another steaming team, the Toronto Raptors. Uh, Fred Van Vliet. I think Fred Van Vliet is kind of like a shaky draft value, possibly because the several rumors that hey, Fred Van Vliet will be rested in several years. He's been hurt, but just last game, just earlier, he just showed the value that he can provide, especially that Pascal Siakam is currently out of in the picture with an injury. So, do you think Fred Van Vliet can really stick as a second rounder this season?
Yeah, he can. Per game value, I think he's an easy second rounder. Potentially even sneaks into the first round with that combination of high assists, high steals. I think that's a great stat set to be of great value. I think he's always going to have, and he's going to hit you with your field goal percentage. It's in the 30s, which is unfortunate if he can lift that, that takes his game to the next level. But while Siakam's out, he's going to be leading this team, and he's going to be awesome. In terms of totals, that's probably a different thing. Per game, absolutely a second rounder. Totals could be a different story. Just he does have that propensity to get injured. He plays a high number of minutes, and that's just the Raptors thing. It's high 30s. He's averaging 38 minutes per game. So that's probably not even as high as he could go with Nick Nurse just smashing these guys. But yeah, I think he's definitely a second rounder. And again, I think towards the playoffs, and if you have that luxury of being able to hold him up into the playoffs, but then seeing if you can offload him for another guy that's potentially in the second round, I'd probably make that move. But right now, enjoy it because he's going to be massive while Siakam's out.
Okay, so two questions that might be lingering in the back of the head of a lot of GMs, especially those who owns Fred VanVleet. Is this a good opportunity to sell Fred VanVleet given his historical historically being injured and might be rested?
Yeah, the injuries, you can't really predict them, but he has shown to be quite injury prone. But like I was saying, he's going to be quite massive while Siakam's out. So I would probably enjoy while you can, and his value is just probably going to raise in the next couple of weeks while Siakam is out. So I'd be timing it nicely if possible to see if you can sell high in the next couple of weeks. But I wouldn't be rushing to sell him because, like I said, those steals and assists and those threes as well, that's just going to give you fantasy gold. So enjoy it. If you can get a second rounder in return, do it. If not, enjoy it, ride it out, and let's just, fingers crossed, he doesn't get injured moving towards playoff territory.
So there you go. And then question number two would be, who from the Toronto Raptors roster got dinged now that Fred VanVleet is back? I'm thinking, yeah, there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're probably going to say this exact same thing, but Scotty Barnes, I think, point forward, I think while VanVleet was out, he had more of a playmaking role. So Scotty Barnes, I know people were looking for a huge breakout this season. He's been really good. He's been very solid. But with VanVleet, I think he takes a slight ding. And even today, we saw that Gary Trent had lower numbers, and they're not directly correlated, but his minutes were quite low, and that could have had something to do with running the bigs as well. With, we'll get to it shortly, but Christian Koloko looked outstanding as well. So that may have had something to do with Gary Trent's low minutes today.
Yeah, the reason I kind of like shot that question is, this is like I think we have what we call like the NBA fantasy basketball economics. Whenever someone rises in a certain team, there are several players that loses, right? So with Fred VanVleet being expected to really, bang for as long as Pascal Siakam is out, maybe we focus more on those players that get dinged, and then we buy low, right? Like for example, the Scotty Barnes and what do you call this, Gary Trent Jr. maybe. So let's just monitor that a couple more games, and then let's see how the CISO battle comes in. Speaking of plays that get dinged, after the day that Terry Rozier came back, our comeback kid, Dennis Smith Jr., one of the best story this season, actually got injured. Um, I think you kind of like answered this in our Q&A episode. Um, you think Dennis Smith Jr. is still a hold or not?
He's questionable for tomorrow. I would still hold him for tomorrow. And again, with a loaded Monday days of games, you could put him on your bench, not necessarily play him. I'd still like to see how he fits next to Rozier. LaMelo Ball is due back soon, though. So if you still have that opportunity to sell high, you got to do it now. You got to act quickly. But I think most GMs are onto it. People understand that he was injured. Rozier's back. LaMelo Ball will be back soon. So you probably won't be able to pull that off. But I'd still be holding for now just to see what that fit next to Rozier looks like. But again, with his defensive stats and his profile, I think he could still be a valuable hold at this stage until LaMelo's back. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same thing. I think he'll definitely curve a role there. As you can see, they're kind of like missing some punch in the backcourt, especially when Malik Monk was gone. Who else? Devontae Graham was gone. They haven't really had that solid backcourt. Maybe the moment they get Kemba Walker. So let's see, because Kemba Walker has been really, kind of like a hook to Charlotte in terms of rumors. But Dennis Smith Jr., I kind of like you actually mentioned that thing that I would like to highlight. Those steals coming from Dennis Smith Jr. He's been really clumping guards since he played this season. Very again, very good comeback story for Dennis Smith Jr. He was hoped to be the Luca before Luca was drafted, right?
Yeah, he was a high draft pick. He had a lot of potential, and we know about his dunking prowess as well. But he's come back with a vengeance this season. Bear in mind as well, Gordon Hayward's out, so again, there's more minutes for him as well. So hold him. Let's see how he fits with Rozier, and we'll reassess when the other guys return.
There you go. Next up, you've actually mentioned this earlier. Pascal Siakam is out, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, hopefully just a week or a couple of days. Three-headed monster. Give me your valuation in terms of the sequence you would add these players. Choose between Coloco, Chris Boucher, and Precious Achua.
Boucher, number one, I think he's a proven fantasy performer. He's already performing well. He's probably already rostered. He was a really high percentage pickup during the week, so he's probably already rostered. But I would take him first. Personally, I like the look of Coloco, and he looked awesome today. He had 6 blocks, played 31 minutes. He looked outstanding, and I picked him up in one of my leagues, my hometown league. So I think he'll be able to provide that value. And Precious, yeah, he'll get you a lot of rebounds. But again, that three-headed monster, his percentages ding you as well. So in terms of category leagues, I'm putting him a distant third. He's probably got a lot more value in points leagues and probably has more value than Coloco. But I've got Coloco above him in category leagues. How do you rank them?
Same thing, bro. And I kind of like answered this one of our Twitter followers. I just think that at this point, especially if you have someone that is really dispensable at the end of your bench, I would really flip or kind of like roll the dice in adding Coloco. He was really great earlier. Thing is, in the past, we've kind of like experienced this when Toronto just got Precious Achua from the Miami Heat. There were several weeks last year wherein we are expecting Chris Boucher to really, oh, this is gonna be the week that our water boy really, gotta show the Toronto Raptors that he can really play. But then again, there were a couple of days there that Precious Achua kind of like outplayed him. Maybe not outplayed, or maybe we all know how Toronto coaches really handle their big. So sometimes for some reason, they hate uh, Chris Boucher. Maybe now, not so much, but in the past, they kind of like hate Chris Boucher. So we really had some glimpse of Precious Achua, which again is very good in category leagues, but the percentages is kind of like rough. So I would assume that there will be games similar to that experience. There will be games that Coloco had a game like earlier. Then Chris Boucher will also have some run that goes as well with Precious Achua. But most likely the safest ad there is really Chris Boucher. I think Chris Boucher is the safest ad there, and I would and then I'll go Coloco.
Yeah, and I think Coloco, he's started recently as well, and it has helped obviously with Siakam, and before that, Van Vliet was out. And we know that whenever there's a starter that is missing, that Boucher does tend to get a lot of good value as well. But Coloco, I think he's a rookie, he's really exciting, 7-footer. He just stands out literally and metaphorically on the court. So I think again, we're going back to the scarcity of blocks. And if you can get 6 blocks in one game, he's a potential winner of a category by himself. So if you've got 3 or 4 games of him in a week, even if he only plays 15 to 25 minutes. I don't know if he can get more than 31 like he did in the last game, but if you can get between 15 and 25 and get those blocks, I think it goes a long way to you winning that category.
We're getting another Chris Boucher, ironically, right?
Yeah,
Remember,
absolutely,
before
absolutely.
Chris Boucher was Chris Boucher. I think that's Coloco. And another fun fact, um, he's a countryman of Pascal Siakam. So they were actually hyped that Masai actually drafted Coloco. So it was fun. Toronto is like the Orlando Magic. They love big guys, so big and long guys. So I'm pretty sure the Toronto Raptors will find a way to really play these big studs. On the other hand, Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson, the moment that Jay Crowder asked for a trade and wants out and won't play, doing like the John Wall thing, on the back of my head, it's going to be Cam Johnson for sure. And then a couple of games, it was shaky, and then he kind of like had this game that really reminded us, of, hey, I'm here. I mean, you should have like added me immediately when I was available in your free agent pool. And then he got injured, so it was like a short-lived kind of like breakout, kind of like year. So it's not a breakout year anymore. It's a breakout day. But with Cam Johnson out, who's the ad there, bro?
Tough one. I don't think there's a standard league ad, but you're looking at deeper leagues. I think you've mentioned it previously, but Torrey Craig, I think he's good for defensive stats. He's one that you could consider in a 14 teamer or deeper. Um, Dario Saric, he's been a favorite of mine in previous years, particularly when he was at the 76ers. But he could have some sneaky value with 20 minutes per game off the bench as well. It's a tough one. I just don't think there is a standard league ad in Cam Johnson's absence. And at this stage, we don't know what his timeline is in terms of his return, but it could be end of season. Hopefully not. It could just be a couple of months. But unless you've got an IL slot that you can just tuck him away into, you can't retain him, unfortunately. And he's looked really good in recent times, which is a real shame because he was destined to become a top 70 player in fantasy this season.
Agree. And then also on top of that, just getting a full circle for our episode. Phoenix only has one quality game this week. So if you kind of like use your um uh, uh current ad drop uh for someone like Darius Saric, if you need some points or maybe rebounds, and if you need defensive stats, Corey Gray, then it's going to be tough because they'll just give you one game for this week. I doubt that you'll be prioritizing them to play in the big Monday and Wednesday game. So again, it's tough. It's tough to really get a Phoenix Suns player just thinking that, hey, maybe this player could really uh, fill the void of Cam Johnson. Um,
Yep.
let's just quickly go back. I can see some solid questions here in our comment section. Let's just quickly check them out. This one, I guess you've kind of like answered this essentially, but Ronnie is asking us who's to pick here, Kispert, Goodwin, or Abdia.
Uh, Again, it's a little bit questionable with Bradley Beal. So I don't really like Kispert just because I think Beal will return at some stage this week. So of those guys, I'll probably take Denny.
Yeah, I would pick Denny as well. Papi Romnick Tandok, thoughts on Cam
Mm.
Thomas? Goods for stream for this week.
I think he's a really solid pickup. Yeah, I like Cam Thomas. He's looked really impressive in the last couple of games for Brooklyn. I thought Aussie Paddy Mills would actually take up um, sort of the points and threes that Kyrie has left behind. But Cam Thomas has looked awesome. He's still a young player. He's got solid minutes. So he's a fantastic stream and potentially longer term, depending on what happens with Kyrie.
Exactly. That's actually what I was thinking to add there. I think he is a good pickup, especially if you need scoring punch. Plus, he's actually doing some playmaking chores. So that's something that he's been kind of like talking in the preseason. He kind of like mentioned that, hey, the team is actually pushing me not to only score but also to facilitate. Because the backup guards in the Brooklyn lineup are kind of like old, so it would really make sense for him to try to step up and do some playmaking chores. And it's actually evident he dropped some couple of dimes already in the past two games that he got a lot of minutes. So yeah, I actually added him in our deep league DMac. So I'm hoping for the best for Cam Thomas. Papi Isaiah James. They aren't Fox trade value.
Mhm. It's high. I think he's been awesome this season. I know he missed one game. He actually, while I was camping and didn't have any reception, I left him on my bench in our league, which was almost a cardinal sin. But yeah, he's been a second round value this season. His percentages have looked fantastic. Unbelievably, his free throws. He's not a punt free throw guy, apparently, which is unbelievable. He's shooting at 87%, 88% from the free throw line. So that's very unexpected. So I think he's got high value at the moment. He's obviously the alpha on that Sacramento Kings team. He's he's regained that role since the Halliburton trade. Sabonis has looked better, but I still think De'Aaron Fox is the alpha on that team. So if you're not getting anything in the at least the first three rounds, I don't think it's worth trading him away. He's looked really, really good.
Yeah, and if ever you really want to trade the Aaron Fox, you really need to ask some big value names for the Aaron Fox, because he's really playing solid, and then getting those dimes is actually very important. Plus the points that he gives us. Um, this is kind of like fitting for me, given that I have several leagues that where I own Anthony Davis. So Papi Zalel here asks, can we be confident with Anthony Davis this season? Or is it like the same old ish?
Mm. He's always got that risk, doesn't he? He's an injury prone guy, and I think I've mentioned it on previous shows. Every time we see an update on Twitter about him going to the locker room, you hold your breath for that few minutes. But he's giving you great value. He's a first rounder, easy first rounder, sixth ranked player in 9 cap this season. So he's getting close to where he used to be as that number one or number two guy. So you probably would have picked him up in the second round easily this season. So tremendous value. I don't know if he maintains this just through his health and longevity. If you can trade him for a first rounder, you absolutely do that. Just I am not confident with him retaining that health throughout the season. But look, if you can't do it, you ride it, and you just pray and you hope that he doesn't get injured for whatever reason it is. But yeah, he's almost the AD of old at the moment.
I agree. I was planning to really flip my Anthony Davis to Carl Anthony Towns, but that was kind of like halted because Carl Anthony Towns had several games, and then Rudy Gobert won't play for a couple of days. So yeah, it's a bummer for me. That was my plan, but I guess I can't pull it right now. So there's a question here. Morris or Highland for tomorrow games? Quick answer for me. Despite Monte Morris playing the starter minutes, surprisingly, there's a good chance that Highland outvalues him tomorrow just because of the matchup. So as you can see, the Denver Nuggets is going to play against the San Antonio Spurs. So I'm thinking that if there's a blowout game, then there's a good chance that Bones Highland can actually outvalue Monte Morris. Especially that despite being in the starter lineup, Monte Morris isn't a usage guy. So you draft him or you get him to get a couple of assists, but he's not known for that. It's more of like the assist to turnover ratio being that efficient guard. So it depends on what you need. But yeah, I'm I would vote Bones Island here and try to roll the dice of a good game. Maybe he had a very solid game last time. Maybe it's a start of something. I think you are actually hyped for Bones Island this season, right, bro?
I was very hyped for him, but he had a really slow start to the season. I actually dropped him in one of my main leagues. He's now been re-picked up just because he has had huge games in the last couple. Having said that, in the last game, he played a lot of junk time, but he was such an efficient player. He's been smashing the threes. He's looked really impressive. So in terms of upside, I would take Highland over Monty. Having said that, if Bill ends up sitting again for protocols, Morris could have that assist value as well. And we all know of his assist to turnover ratio being elite, top two, with Tyus Jones, I think. If you need the assists, I think Morris will get you those. Highland will get you the points and the threes. So it is pretty close. But for upside, I'd probably go Highland. So we agree with each other.
There you go. In this game of ours, it really kind of like gave us a certain feeling of fulfillment whenever, hey, I think Bones is going to play big tomorrow. When that hits, I'm super happy whenever that happens. So that's the reason why I love kind of like really being more optimistic in some players. And then before we move forward again to our the players that we'll be discussing, a big shout out to our good friend here, Fantasy Basketball Crew. And then I would also like to formally invite you guys, Fantasy Basketball Crew, if you have some time, maybe you could actually drop by in our show and then, really kind of like share your thoughts about fantasy basketball because you've been in my knowledge they actually created their page or their accounts earlier than mine, so it just so happened that maybe they were kind of like busy, and so would love to hear your thoughts, bros. Okay, going back, let's go back in our slides. Last topic for today, before we clear all the questions. Kyrie Irving. You kind of like mentioned him earlier already. When we're talking about Cam Thomas. Uh, how would you handle a Kyrie Irving if you own him?
Hmm. Actually, I had a couple of polls on Twitter around this because it's a tough one. I don't happen to have any shares of Kyrie, so I'm very relieved I don't have that stress. Uh,
Ah,
it is a tough one. I don't know. Yeah, well, I mentioned it last week. It's a potential buy low. And the Nets came out. There was talk around a 5-point plan, so some steps that he'd need to tick off for him to return to the team. And I've mentioned it before. I don't like him as a person. I think he's a great player and great fantasy player, and he's awesome when he's rolling on your team. But he's so frustrating to own and very, very unpredictable. So I know he's a first rounder per game. So if you can flip him, and I would look to flip him. I think um, I don't know. I just don't trust him down the stretch. And I know a lot of people on the poll, those that do have him on their rosters, I think most actually said they would prefer to hold than to sell at a discount. But if I could get a top 25 player, I'd do it in an instant. I think there's too much risk with this guy, and who knows what he's going to do next time. Um, yeah, I just don't trust him. What do you think?
I'm kind of like torn because if given that I kind of like I think I own Kyrie Irving in three teams in three leagues. So well, number one, it's kind of hard to really sell Kyrie Irving when you're expecting an almost equivalent value because that's not gonna happen. So that's kind of like the first thing that you need to understand if you own Kyrie Irving. But to be honest, I might really buy low. I mean, especially if if you pick last and then you think when you check your league and then you'll be honest to yourself that hey, I really did mess it up during draft day. So if you're in that situation, bro, I'm buying Kyrie Irving. I'm buying everyone who is being hated just to try to salvage my team. Of course, you buy low. You don't buy within the value, but I would suggest for if you're that guy, if you think that you did a you know not so good job in drafting. You think you honestly have a shitty team. You flip a coin and then you roll the dice with Kyrie Irving. On the other hand, if you have Kyrie Irving, I would also suggest, I mean, there's a 10th category in our super kind of like the format that we all love, the 9 cat head to head. Well, I don't want to really open the argument with Roto, but let's assume it's someone that we all love. Shout out to Dan Bresvis. Dan Bresvis will clarify because he loves Roto. Anyway, I would say that it's best to really consider the 10th category, which is peace of mind. Like what DMac was mentioning, that's the reason why he really kind of like swayed and backed off with those Kyrie stocks. So yeah, I would suggest you flip him. It happens when you drafted Kyrie Irving, and I'm talking to myself as well. You should have like really expected this. At some point, at any package, at any situation, randomly, on the back of your head, you drafted him with the expectation that something will definitely happen, and then now there it is. So I guess you stick with you stuck with your gut that hey, maybe this is gonna be the year that Kyrie Irving plays well. He was about to do that, but then again, he's Kyrie Irving, so you have to man up. You have to really do something about it. So yeah, I say you flip it if if you're someone that really wants peace of mind. If not, it's fine to hold, but at when? I mean, when is the right time for you not to hold for Kyrie Irving? Because we don't know when he's coming back, right? He has this checklist, right? I forgot what are those checklists. I remember like saying apology or stuff like that, but he has this checklist. So, I mean, after the checklist, it's also about the Brooklyn Nets allowing him to play, and now we are seeing news that people are trying to kind of like cancel not only the Brooklyn Nets, not only the Kyrie Irving, but the NBA. Nike already backed off for Kyrie Irving. Kyrie 8 is only available in Cartimar. By the way, bro, you have a lineage of Filipino. You have to know what Cartimar is. Ask your cousins and your your family. Cartimar is like what I call this. It's a place where you get class B shoes or class C shoes. And I was joking that hey, Nike pulled off for Kyrie 8. Guess what? Cartimer has it. Rare. They are the only ones who sells that one out. But yeah,
Special edition.
yeah, shout out to Cartemar. Maybe you can give me some basketball shoes. Because here in the Philippines, bro, if you play hoops here, there's a lot of court here that is just has rough flooring. So you won't buy what very expensive shoes and then play on the rough floor, right? So the usual move there, if you're a hooper, you go to Cartimar and buy a replica because you know you can still ball in rough floor. So
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
there you go. So bro, I've been talking a lot here. Is there any other news or is there any other notable players that we kind of like missed for last week?
Yeah, I think James Harden was a big injury. So he's going to be out for some time. We already spoke about DeAnthony Melton, but for owners of James Harden, that's a big blow. So he could be out for several weeks. Also, Rudy Gobert, he's out in protocols. I think he's questionable for tomorrow, but just looking at his fit with Cat, I think they've both had pretty slow starts trying to work out that chemistry next to each other in the front court in Minnesota. So I think Rudy Gobert is actually a buy low. So we haven't really spoken about too many sell highs and buy lows apart from the last few. But I think Rudy Gobert is a bit of a buy low at this stage. But it would just be interesting to see how things pan out with those two big guys. I think they're the main bits of news in terms of injury. I'm still looking at notable players like OG Anunoby, and I know I've spoken about him previously, and I think he was a bit of a real great target. He was going in the 7th and 8th rounds of some leagues that I was going in, and he's now a 13th ranked player in 9cat. So I think that's really remarkable. He's looked awesome, and he's another to benefit with Pascal Siakam on the sidelines for at least the next 2 weeks to be really reevaluated in a fortnight. So yeah, OG for me, great pickup if you're able to get him in the late or mid to late rounds.
Slow mo, bro. You mentioned Cat and Rudy Gobert. I
Yeah,
think slow mo could really carve a very important role in the Minnesota Timberwolves, despite Rudy Gobert coming back. I think he'll stick. I really think he's going to be essential, especially they don't have that second playmaker in the group. Not only playmaker in terms of really, doing the system plays offensively, but that goes as well defensively because you know Sloan was a very very smart player, so I think he'll have value. Um,
yeah. What he
Another
lacks in speed, he makes up with IQ. But it's interesting. Before the last game, he wasn't meant to start. I think it was meant to be Nuz Reid, possibly even Torian Prince. But then they ended up going for slow mo. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out for tomorrow's game. Let's see what happens.
yeah, for sure. Because I was thinking they are still ramping up his minutes, but unfortunately, Rudy Gobert, is out. So I guess let's see tomorrow. That's going to validate some of our assumptions. Another situation that I would like to add in this episode is the Chicago Bulls situation and the New Orleans Pelicans situation, because those teams have players that doesn't play in back to backs. Not always, but they have Zach Lavine, and then they have um, uh, Zion Williamson. So here's my question for you: do you own players that kind of like relieves those main guys that doesn't play in back to backs? Let's say for example someone like Alex Caruso, who I think is one of the leading players that has been dropped and added for since day one. I think in standard leagues he's been in and out of the free agency pool. And then on the other hand, for the Pelicans, I think it's um, Najee Marshall. I think is did I get it correctly? That kind of like gets the minutes when Zion is out. So again, the question here is: do you intend to just stream those players, or you stick with them?
Yeah, I actually had Trey Murphy on my team, so he benefited when Zion was out. Same goes for when Ingram was out, but I dropped him. I actually dropped him for Koloko today, which was disappointing because I love Trey Murphy's game, but for a standard league, I had to drop him. But as soon as I see that if Zion or Ingram or both happen to be sitting, I'll be picking him up straight away. So I'm not holding on to him. The guy that I am holding on to, and you mentioned him, it's Alex Caruso, but that's in a very particular build, and I'm holding him because it is a punt points, and it's also a punt threes team, but it's a punt points. So when he's giving you elite steals and really good assists and rebounds today, really surprisingly, he's a hold for me. He fits that build really nicely. So that's one guy that I have, and it's interesting with Levine. He played on a back-to-back earlier in the week, but then he missed today at the front end of a back-to-back. So that's something else to monitor over time. You would like to think that as the season wears on, he will play more of those back-to-backs, but it's just something else to monitor.
There you go. And then also to quickly add, I guess we can also put the likes of Jamal Murray and Bruce Brown in that mix. Almost similar situation. Okay, so
Yeah, and that's you spoke about Bones Highland as well. I think he's a really solid pickup
yeah.
or if you think that Jamal Murray may sit on certain back-to-backs. One last thing I did want to note as well. I mentioned it earlier on my Twitter, but Larry Nance. I hope you guys picked him up because he's playing more minutes than Jonas Valanciunas, which is really interesting because I think Valanciunas was easily being drafted in the top 50, and now Nance is outplaying him. So he's been a really good pickup for the week for me.
For sure. Actually, I had a good conversation with one of my pals here because during the draft, I guess during the actual draft, he was asking me how high am I for Jonas Valanciunas. I was telling him it's quite tricky just because number one, I think knock on the wood if Zion kind of like really sits, he's one of the biggest beneficiary for Zion Williamson, being that potent offensive player in the front court. But I already this is like way back during the draft. I mentioned to them that Larry Nance is going to be a tricky addition in the New Orleans Pelicans system, just because they badly need some defense in their front court. I mean, they already got that in their backcourt, but in their front court, Jonas Valanciunas and Williamson is a bad duo in terms of in the defensive side of the of the court. I mean, we all love those blocks from Zion Williamson, but those blocks are coming like on the weak side, like help defense. But generally, defensively, that's the main reason why Larry Nance has been playing a lot of minutes. And I think as me and DMac actually voted for Willie Green to win the Coach of the Year, I think Willie Green is that smart that he knows they really need Larry Nance. So yeah, just like to share some thoughts about Larry Nance. Before we end the show, let's clear up some comments and questions here. Papi PG Santos basically na-ask ko na to. Paps, he was asking about the Spurs. Will Silver's warning to the tankers impact the likes of the Spurs to force not to tank? You go
No,
first, bro.
no, he's said it in previous years, and it hasn't stopped people from strategically tanking. So, in previous years, guys or teams tend to tank closer to the end of the season. I think you are now looking at teams strategically resting guys and losing the earlier games. But some of the teams that we thought were going to be the biggest tankers have looked really good this season. The likes of Utah Jazz, they're a surprise packet, but I still think as the season wears on, they'll be in the run-in along with the likes of Houston and even the Magic. They're doing a great job of looking spectacular, but losing a lot of games. I don't think Silver's warning will deter any teams from tanking when you have a generational talent in Wemby that can offset all of those fines and all of those warnings. I think he's going to bring in multi-million dollar, billion-dollar into the next franchise or into the franchise that he signs for. So I don't think that's going to really deter teams.
Yeah, I don't think it. I definitely 100% agree that it won't stop my San Antonio Spurs to get Wembanyama. So I'm kind of like officially telling you guys that we're getting Wemby. It's not about how, it's about when. So yeah, definitely agree. And then last point, save the elephant in the room. How did we miss this? Bro, ball. What can you say about Ball? Is he the pick up player of the year? I know it's still early.
Yeah, I have a list in front of me. He's on my sell high list. I think that as the season wears on, those guards will come back into the lineup and his minutes will diminish. He's looked fantastic, and by all means, you need to roster him right now. But um, you've still got Markel Fultz, you've still got Cole Anthony to come back. Jalen Suggs is only just ramping up now. A KK as well, he's getting more minutes. So it's going to be quite tough to get the same minutes that he's been getting, 30 plus that he's been getting. But he's looked fantastic. So I think he's still very, very important to what they're trying to achieve. I guess what they're trying to achieve is tanking, but he's still really, really good. So you must have him on your team right now, but he's definitely a sell high for me.
And also, he's been playing like Wemby. It is like a preview on what Wemby can do. So really fun to watch. Two balls. I call him two balls. And yeah, there's also conversation in our league that hey, how do we value ball? Do we sell? Do we buy? Or if we ever sell or if we ever buy, what's the value? So he could stick. There's a good chance he could stick, but maybe that Mo Bamba type of minutes wherein it's not like straight up 30 minutes always, right? Plays around 20 minutes ish, maybe if he ever he sticks. Because again, DMac already mentioned several names, but we kind of like forgot the player that some fantasy analyst, specifically Papi Josh Lloyd, wants to forget, which is, the writer, the author, Jonathan Isaac. So what if he plays? So that's going to be some very, very um kind of like uh, it's going to be like a three-headed monster somewhat, or two-headed monster in the forward position. Um Before we end,
I have a
bro.
question for you, Roy. Just a very quick question. Who would
Yo,
you
go go
rather,
go.
Bol, or Hartenstein rest of season?
Ooh. So here's the thing. Uh if if I want a safe answer, I'd definitely go with Isaiah Hartenstein. Because upside wise, I think Bol has a better upside because he actually shoots threes and all. But I'd pick Hartenstein.
Yeah,
How
I
about
would
you,
too.
bro?
Yeah, same. I love Hartenstein's game, and I think he'll play those minutes down the stretch as well.
Yeah. And I think people will gonna buy some Hartenstein after this episode.
Mm.
I think we kind of like pick the stocks for Isaiah Hartenstein because we've been kind of like showing a lot of love to Isaiah Hartenstein. Last
As soon as
question.
I
I know
get off
we
this
we
call, I'll be buying. I'll be buying as many Hartensteins as possible.
Last question. This is specific to our Mount Rushmore League, bro. So it this has been back and forth about in trading Luca in our league. So I want to hear your
Mm.
thoughts. So I know
Mm.
you've checked that, but here's the recent trade proposal that was queued for my approval because we have a commission decision. So Lucas' team is getting Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Grant, Bobby Portis, and Lou Dort, while the other team is getting Luka Doncic, Evan Fournier, Gill, and Bullock. I for me it's pretty obvious, but let me get your points here.
Yeah, I think on the surface, obviously, you take the best player, and that's Luca by far. However, I will say, however, it is a deep league, 20 teams, right?
Yeah, 20 teams.
So you're looking at depth. So I'm only big on vetoing, and I think I've mentioned this before, and I've said it multiple times on my Twitter account. I'm only big on vetoing trades if there's collusion suspected or confirmed. And I noticed, and I haven't paid attention to all of the chat, but I've noticed there's been a lot of chat and trying to justify the trade. And look, yes, you go for the better player and you try to build that up. But when you're in a deeper league, I quite like the depth. So, and again, I think the guys are trying to justify it. There doesn't seem to be any collusion. I think they're both quite high in the standings. So there's no one team that's quite low in the standings trying to obviously lose and help the other team win. It's a tough one. I don't think it hurts the integrity of the league. Um, but I've noticed that a couple of those trades, the earlier trades, have been vetoed. It is a tough situation as the commissioner, and you being the commissioner, it's a big call. But for me, if there's no collusion, you just have to let the trade through. But again, your league, your call.
Yeah, the reason I vetoed the last two uh, trades is it it we're on the same boat. Thing is, I kind of like have this process we're in. You as the GMs, you really need to sell me the reason why you're doing this. Even though it's not, if essentially surface check, it might be, it might look that isn't fair to use to the GMs, because I'm telling them that there's a difference between a commission perspective versus the GM's perspective, because as a commissioner you try to really balance it out with the consideration how it impacts the league, how it impacts it so happened that it's early in the season. If it's like middle or later in the later the season, I would be checking the standings. There's a lot of stuff that to add, right? But generally, the purpose of the trade isn't really clear to me yet. So, like, if you just say that, hey, I love Luca, this is stuff like that, I would like consider that reason. But given that there's no reason, so what I did is I tried to check if both team benefits, because for me, part of the commission roles is to ensure that both teams benefit. you don't influence them, but you guide them. You guide that, hey, dude, are you sure? Because I mean, if you just give you a valid reason, I'll approve this. But are you sure? I need you to understand that this might happen. So that's my point. And then the first two attempts for me is kind of like extreme. That again, given that the purpose and the reason of the benefit for both teams aren't clear to me. So I told them that, hey, we have to really do another run for this. But I still encourage them to do it. I don't like just veto them. But yeah, I'm gonna sit here again and then check them out. But it's going to be fun. And then I've already approved a couple of trades. So just one trade. It's very straight up Stephen Curry for Joel Embiid. And then now, let's see if I approve this. So I know you might be watching, guys. So you're giving me a hard time, to be honest. I the moment that I have finally availability, you give me this situation to analyze this thing. Come on, but yeah, I love it, totally love it. Okay, it's been 1 hour of fun, bro. Giving the floor to you. Invite them, bro.
Yeah, another big week in hoops. I think we spoke about it at the start. Interesting in terms of streaming, but I think now we've established most of the chemistry of the teams. In terms of rotations, I think that's pretty clear. Some injuries to manage as well. So I think, again, moving into another very interesting week of hoops.
Bro, I want to start a kind of like a weekly drops for us too. What we kind of like learn, or a tip or a best practice that we could share to our followers every week. So let me start for my end. One tip for me, when your league has kind of like a, what do you call this, a waiver uh kind of like auction format. What do you call that, bro? When you put in some dollar before you get the player off the waiver. I forgot that
Yeah,
kind of
your
like,
bid. Yep.
yeah, bidding.
Yep.
Yeah,
What's your bid?
yeah. Tip: you always add a dollar. Because usually majority of the time people kind of like gets the bidding like $10, $20. If you kind of like has an assumption that, hey, I think people are valuing this $20, you just put $1. You
Yep.
bid $21. Or you bid $11. Usually for me it works. So yeah, that's kind of like my tip for this week. How about you, bro?
Yep. Mine's paying attention to the schedule. I think you need to work a few days in advance, a little bit like chess. So think a few steps ahead, see if you can get ahead of the game, and see if you can just see if there are any trends as well in terms of minutes, playing time, and rotations, because you may be able to pick up a guy out of nowhere that's going to have a solid role in the team. Particularly, you need that value in a deeper league as well. So be mindful, watch those boxes as well, those box scores, and look for any trends.
There you go. So expect me and DMac dropping some observation tips, best practices that we also kind of like learned for the past week or even for the past year. So I guess this is a good practice that we share for you on a weekly basis. So thank you so much, DMac. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, this is your fantasy papi, Papi Roy. Follow DMac at NBA Fantasy Bible at Twitter. For me, Fantasy Basketball Pinas, NBA Fantasy League, that's PH, and Facebook. YouTube and Spotify, Fantasy Basketball PH. By the way, I'm actually finally, I was telling that I will be organizing them. Now I am literally organizing them. Before we actually started the show, I was already organizing them. So expect some positive changes for our contents, more organization and more availability. Again, Twitter, NBA Fantasy Papi. Don't follow me. Follow Dimac instead. And then, of course, Kumu at Kumu, Papi Roy. So thank you so much, bro. I hope to see you
Thank you, Roy.
soon again. And then I hope
Absolutely.
your team wins, but I hope you'll lose when we face each other in our league.
Bring it on. Bring it
Clean
on.
Capella, bro. Clean Capella. Can't move on.
Beast.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, bro.
Thanks, Roy. See you, everyone.
Yo, bro. How
Hey,
was it?
mate. Yeah, good show. I liked it. I like the format. What did you think?
Yeah, I think we had fun, and then hopefully they also had fun because it
I think
was.
so. I
I
think
think
lots of questions. That's a good sign.
yeah, and then there's several other questions that we weren't able to answer because actually my connection is kind of like slowing down for some reason. So I tried to just show anything that I can see in my space. But hopefully, I think at least 80% or 75% we got it.
Love it. Well done. Well hosted. Love being part of the show.
For sure, for sure. And again, see you again next week, bro. And then we'll definitely create a template moving forward. I'm gonna try to upgrade it more. So, it's going to be better for sure.
Sounds good, mate. Have a good week and take care. I'll see you soon.
You too, bro.
Okay,
Thanks, bro.
bye.